Well, if this feels like a never-ending saga for our viewers and listeners, that's because it is. It's been dragging on since 2010, when Julian Assange was first arrested in connection with, at that time, it was an appeal by the Swedish government to get him extradited to Sweden on sexual offences charges. He said it was a pretext to get him to the US over WikiLeaks, the company that he founded, leaking hundreds of thousands of diplomatic cables. Since then, of course, the US have launched a formal effort to try to get him to the US under charges. He's been fighting it ever since. Our viewers and listeners, I'm sure, will remember the, again, protracted saga when he decided, after a few years of appealing and counter-appealing in the courts in the UK to those efforts to get him extradited, he took refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in central London and was in there for years. The Ecuadorians eventually allowed the Metropolitan Police in to their diplomatic premises to get him out. And for the last 3 years, well, he's been in Belmarsh prison to ensure that he can't go running off again, while this whole process is effectively being repeated, the process that began before he headed to the Ecuadorian embassy. And it's culminated. I say culminated, it hasn't. You know, it's going to still drag on. But it has today resulted in a district judge at Westminster Magistrates Court granting that extradition order to the United States. Now, as I say, it's still not over because he can appeal. It goes to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, now to formally grant the extradition, at which stage you would expect him to be transferred to the US. But he can still appeal, make representations to Priti Patel before she makes that decision. And his legal team could even go to the High Court again. So, as I say, if I sound exasperated, I am. I've been covering this story for 12 years now. There's no end really in sight for a wee while yet, let's say.
Wow. Yes, and I remember those images of him being dragged out of that Ecuadorian embassy. What's his future then? You know, say he does get extradited. What will he expect when he arrives in the UK? Remind us what kinds of charges he's facing. Yeah,
well, he's facing charges of espionage, that he conspired with others to hack into US military databases with a view to leaking these diplomatic cables, hundreds of thousands of them, cables into the conduct of Western troops, in particular US troops in Afghanistan during the war there and in Iraq afterwards. Now, in theory, those charges could have a maximum prison term of 175 years. However, the Americans have indicated that probably the offence is likely to bring a sentence of around 6 or 7 years, and that they might not be, or they may be open to him serving that sentence in Australia. So the thing is, this could have been over and done with many, many years ago for Julian Assange had he complied with the original extradition order. He, of course, says that the United States, it's all, you know, all they're trying to do is to curtail his freedom of expression, to cover up and to curtail freedom of the press, because his supporters say he's a journalist. He absolutely is not a journalist. He's never been a journalist. He's a political activist who founded this group, WikiLeaks, which was all about exposing whatever they wanted to expose and putting out on the World Wide Web hundreds of thousands of cables, which at the time meant that countries like the US, the UK and others were scrambling to get all their intelligence assets out of countries because they were named in these documents.